Hello, everybody, and welcome to 10th Time is the Charm. This is First Ring Daily. It's Monday. How's it going, Paul?
Well, it's Monday. For the upteenth time, I've thought to myself, this weekend would have been pretty good if I'd had a third day attached to it.
Yep.
So,
There's no way to say I could agree with that any stronger. But before we dive into that, today's show is brought to you by Cloudberry Lab. Check them out, cloudberrylab.com/FRD. Grab that free trial offer and help yourself back up just a little bit better. And Paul, we're going to kick today's show off with crappy backups because Paul, if I had some like stargazing noise, if you remember a long, long time ago on a show called Friday, where we talked about things that we liked, I believe I mentioned OneDrive.
Yeah.
I take it all back. All of it.
Jeez. What a difference a day makes.
Yeah, it really is. So here's the current problem, Paul. I have, unbeknownst to me, I didn't really keep track of this stuff. I have approximately 900 gigabytes of videos and photos. I have approximately 100 gigabytes of other stuff, and I have approximately 0% free space in my OneDrive file or folder.
Yep. This is causing me to look at my own. Yeah, I'm at 755 gigabytes of 1.04 terabytes possible, so I still have a little bit of space left, but yet.
But as you're well aware, you cannot buy any additional storage. I would happily give Microsoft anywhere between $10 to $20 for even an extra modest 500 gigs or whatever.
Yep.
But you can't. And so
this
I'm
is,
in a predicament.
This is something I've complained about myself in the past, and it's going to come to a head for me as well. I kind of had always hoped that over time, wow, you can see what the largest files you have in OneDrive is, by the way, and that's worth doing because some of the stuff I have up in here is kind of insanity. There's a couple of movies I have for some reason. I have a Gears of War ISO file. That must be humongous. It is 7.41 gigabyte. That's, by the way, one half of the free amount of OneDrive storage space you get. Just
fantastic.
One file. I'm going to get rid of that.
Yep.
Jeez. Anyhow, yes, I agree with you 100%. This is a need.
Yeah, and so essentially what I'm going to have to do here, because most of my uploads are all just videos and everything of my daughter growing up, and when I say most of them, 700 gigs of it ish are all of that. There's some other random stuff in there from our trips to Seattle and all the behind the scenes stuff that kind of fill out some of the other. But I don't want to get rid of that, and I still want to have it backed up. So I think, and I've played in this area a little bit, I think I'm going to have to move all of my photos and videos to Google Photos.
Right. I mean, you should try to have them in two different places if you can, but yeah, hopefully Microsoft wakes up to this. I think they will,
They have
I really
to.
do.
It seems such a crazy thing that you can't upgrade it, when at one point it was unlimited. And then it's like somebody went in there and hard coded the word 1 terabyte, and now they're like, oh shit, we can't actually undo that.
Right. Yep.
But,
well, I don't know, maybe I said this or wrote this, I don't remember. So this topic came up recently, this notion that OneDrive is really high quality, but change seems to happen pretty slow over there. It took them 3-ish years to come back to something resembling placeholders, for example, in Windows 10. I don't know. I think this happens.
Yeah. I don't know. I wrote a little post just writing about how what I'm probably going to do is I've got another 2 terabyte drive at my house, or actually in my computer. I'm just going to put a backup there so I have it locally and then upload everything on that drive to Google Photos. That way I have a copy local of the high resolution, and then Google Photos is unlimited, but you limited to 16 megapixels, which I don't think is actually an issue, to be honest, for most of my stuff, or any of it actually, possibly. And then the video is at 1080p, and then I'll have a local and a backup in the cloud. But yep.
It's driving us away, one service at a time.
The thing that drives me nuts about this is fine, whatever. Most people don't need more than a terabyte average, whatever. But what they're doing is they're leaving a perfect door open for their competitors to come in and take away customers.
Yeah. And in a world in which monetizing Windows directly is becoming increasingly difficult, this is another way to get people on yet another form of subscription payments.
Yep.
And it's one that I think many people would find very valuable. I even pay Apple a little bit for storage every month. I hate that you have to pay it every month, but the reason is we've got several devices on iOS. Between my kids both have iPhones, and I have an iPad and an iPhone. That's not my primary phone anymore. But just for the backups for those devices, we're kind of creeping over whatever Apple's tiny limit is. So I probably pay them, $1 or $2 a month or whatever it is for the next tier up, because, I want to be able to, my daughter ruins her phone or whatever, and she wants to bring it back up. I don't want that to be an issue, but this is a much bigger issue in many ways.
I do have to tell you that one of my bigger fears in life, and this is pretty minute, but to your point of your daughter ruining your phone, I worry about the day I have to give my daughter a phone, not for the fact of giving her a phone, but I know that I won't be giving her just one phone. It will be multiple phones that get shattered throughout a lifetime.
It's much worse than that. You'll be giving her more than one vehicle as well. Pretty much the first car that these people get is going to be driven into the ground in some capacity. Like, my son destroyed the Volkswagen I had bought, 15 years earlier out here in Pennsylvania. My nephew, who just got his first car, 2-3 months ago, whatever, got in some major accident that totaled it. And they're looking for another car now for this kid. And it's like, welcome to parenthood. It's just,
speaking of first cars,
never stop coming. Yeah.
My first car I bought was because my parents were the exact same way. They said, we're not going to buy you a car. You're going to destroy it, and you've got to earn it, and you've got to know the value of what an actual vehicle is. It was a 89 Chevy Cavalier RS. Piece of shit. Paid like $1,000 for it. 5-speed manual. I actually ended up loving the car. And the clutch went out like 6 months in. Like, just, I learned to drive a stick in that car. I beat the hell out of it, and I rolled it in. My dad told me to call around. He's like, call around and see how much they want to fix it. And it was worth more than the car. They wanted like $1,500 to replace the clutch in a Cavalier. And I was like, well, Dad, what are we going to do? Go buy me a car? And he said, no, we're going to fix it ourselves. And I went, damn it. But I learned how to replace a clutch in a Cavalier in my garage. So
actually, that's pretty cool. See, I didn't have any parents that were capable of such feats, but yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So I know my way around a car quite a bit, enough that I don't want to do a lot of this stuff. I'll do brakes and oil myself if needed, but there's also the value of just driving it to the dealership, giving the guy $35, and he changes the oil for me. I do enjoy that as well. Paul, you wrote up, I think it was this morning, or maybe over the weekend, understanding Windows 10 usage share.
Yeah, every month Net Market Share and also Stat Counter will come out with some kind of report about its usage share is what they're talking about. The percentage of PCs that are running different versions of Windows or Mac OS or Linux, the percentage of tablets and smartphones that are running whatever, the percentage of, there goes Siri again, because shut up please, because or the percentage of usage in web browsers, right, across desktop and mobile, that kind of stuff. And if you're familiar with market share, if you want to look at like how well PCs are doing versus Mac, or how well different versions of PCs are doing or whatever, you really want to look at that stuff quarterly, because there are minor variations as you go month to month. It just doesn't make sense to kind of look at it that way. But with usage share, month over month makes a little bit of sense. I think it actually makes more sense to compare things year over year. But every month, these people come out with some data on that topic. And this past month, according to Net Market Share, Windows 10 fell a little bit. And by a little bit, I mean something like I don't remember the exact number, but let's say 0.63%, like some tiny percent. And to me, plus or minus 1% is basically flat. I don't attribute that to anything. In fact, it could be just a statistical anomaly, and that's what I believe it to be. But, there were these crazy stories like, Windows 7, Windows 10 is, run into a wall, or Windows 10 is not growing anymore. And it's like, no, that's not how this works. And I just went back and looked at the data, because first of all, I think people misunderstand market share and usage share still, even though I keep trying to explain what each means. But secondly, this doesn't mean anything, which was the point of my article. I never would have written anything about this topic other than the fact that others had written what I think were sensational headlines, especially about a non-topic. So, for example, if you go back and look at a year ago, same month, same comparison, month over month, Windows 10 usage share grew approximately 1%, which I still attribute to flat. I think it's a seasonal thing. It's just February. That's the way it goes every year. It's no big deal. Doesn't mean anything. And the more meaningful number is if you look at Windows 10 year over year, you'll see that it actually grew a fairly significant amount. I think it was 10 percentage points. So let's say from, I don't know, 24% of the market to 34% of the market, I think is what it meant. Now, the bigger milestone to look forward to, and I think the thing we're all kind of looking at when it comes to Windows 7 usage, whatever, is when it surpasses Windows 7. According to Net Market Share, which is the group that Microsoft trusts, by the way, which is one of the reasons I trust them, that has not happened yet. They're still, single digits away. I don't remember the exact number, high single digits. According to StatCounter, actually that already happened. Their data is significantly different. In fact, according to their data, Windows 10 usage share grew pretty significantly in this month over month, and there were more people using Windows 10 and Windows 7. I don't believe that, but it's clearly getting close. So I just wanted to write something that kind of explained all that, and it really kind of amounts to a nothing to see here kind of thing. But yeah, there you go.
Well, no, I mean it's somewhat interesting because all these things are samples at the end of the day, and somebody could just type into Google, pull up a random one, and be like, "Oh, that's the truth." But you really got to take it as a holistic point of view.
Well, I mean, you also should use a little common sense. I mean, one should use a little common sense when you think about this stuff. Like Windows 10 is in a position where over time it is going to be growing, period. There's no version of the story where Windows 10 usage as a percentage of the market or just in raw numbers does not grow. Windows 7 is heading toward the point where it's not supported anymore. Windows 8X is not used very much at all. And that's the rest of the market. Not, well, obviously we have Mac, which hasn't really grown year over year, and Linux, which doesn't count because it's so small. So really the only outcome here is Windows 7 continues to lose share. Windows 8 continues to lose share. It doesn't really matter that much. The Mac could grow plus or minus a couple of points. It's not going to impact Windows 10 at all. So, obviously it's growing, as it slowed. Yeah. I mean, it grew really fast when it was free, for sure. It has grown at a more traditional rate ever since. Every time Microsoft comes out with a number, I read a big article. Here's the math. Here's the X number, whatever the number is per month. That actually has gone up recently, folks. I mean, it's not doing poorly. So I don't know. I just see this as a non-story that unfortunately I had to address.
And for all the Linux fans out there who are now angry because Paul said Linux doesn't matter, that's Paul at Thurrott.com for all your lovely hate mail.
Well, let me clarify what I meant by Linux doesn't matter. I mean that broadly, like it doesn't matter at all. So, no, I mean no, I mean as a mainstream desktop computer, whatever. I mean, there is some 1% of people who do use it in that capacity, and there's also I should have mentioned Chrome OS. Obviously, there's a growing body of Chrome books and so forth out in the market as well. So there's more going on than just Windows. Absolutely.
Speaking of other things going on, this week in Washington, D.C., Microsoft, I don't even think it's Microsoft, but there is a Government Cloud or Government Tech Summit, I believe is actually the technical name. And as you would expect, Microsoft is there, and they've announced a bunch of different things. If you're in this space, you should definitely go read the post. I put it up on Petri with all the appropriate backlinks, but at a super high level, Azure Stack, which is their hybrid cloud fabric solution, is now available for government users. They're bringing online 2 new data regions for better redundancy, better latency, depending on where you are. And Microsoft 365 is now government certified. So there's just basically, they're kind of bringing all their major products into the government fold, and you can go now use those, I believe, on data up to what's called secret, but definitely not top secret data.
I love that. Yeah, there was an Azure secret column in the list of offerings. I thought that was kind of cute.
And for those not familiar, secret is like the lowest level of government data clearance. So that's right above, just posted on a billboard. Then you have secret, then top secret, and then I believe there's like super top secret, which is like the top of the food chain or something like that. So I'm sure somebody will correct me, but if they are going to correct me, that's Paul at Thurrott.com. So,
wow. Okay.
Do you have a good weekend, Paul? Did you survive the snowstorm, by the way?
I have an incredible story about that. So Friday afternoon, you may remember, I was leaving right after the podcast to go down to Philadelphia, and the forecast here originally was rain, a little bit of snow mixed in the morning, and then that was going to be it. And the reason we were going to Philadelphia were 2 reasons. We're going to meet my sister-in-law, for lack of a better term, and her husband for dinner. But my wife has been trying to meet a woman who's a publisher down there she's going to work for. So we figured we'd wrap these things into one big day. We could go see a little bit of Philadelphia, go see like the Liberty Bell maybe, or Independence Hall, something like that, and take the afternoon. It'd be good. And it was snowing pretty good here, you know. And I said to Stephanie, like, "Are you sure?" I mean, you know, these other guys, John and Jamie and Joe, have to drive up from Delaware, so it's a similar distance, about an hour 15 minutes from their house. I mean, maybe we shouldn't do this today. And she's like, "No, it's supposed to taper off, blah blah blah." And I'm like, "Okay." And we got on the highway, and like I said, it's an hour and 15-minute drive to Philly from here on the 476. We got about 5 minutes from the house down the highway, and then sat still for over an hour. Like, didn't move, not even an inch. And it's snowing, and it's snowing really good, right? I've driven in snow. Like, I grew up in Boston. I get this kind of stuff. I've been through blizzards. I once drove by a car on fire going to the airport trying to fly out to Miami in the middle of a snowstorm that never happened. I've seen stuff. Like, I've been out in the world, but, you know, I'm like, I kept saying to my wife, maybe we should call these guys. I mean, I don't know if this makes sense or whatever. And so we finally got going. They had to close the highway, and we were in the closed part, so the people going around us elsewhere. But when we finally got moving, what we saw was that there were 8 or 9 vehicles, including 2 18-wheelers, that had all crashed, not into each other in one giant crash, but in 5 or 6 crashes, like off the road. The truck was sideways in one case, and it was really bad. And I was like, you know, maybe we shouldn't be doing that. But we kept going, and so we head down. If you know the area, there's an IKEA that's about 45 minutes away. It's toward Philadelphia. We got down to about there, and we were facing 2 hours more of delays to get into Philadelphia from there, according to Google. So I was like, you know what? Why don't we head off, try a side route, and if that, you know, because Google will reorient you, and maybe that will make a little more sense. We're going to be dealing with rush hour traffic at some point too. We ended up driving around the back roads outside of Philadelphia for 45 minutes or so, stuck in traffic everywhere. It was incredible. And we called those guys finally and said, at some point, Google said, hey, because we had mapped Independence Hall, they were like, the place you're going to will be closed by the time you get there. So we weren't ever going to get to where we were going. So we basically made it about 45 minutes south of the house in about 3 hours, and then decided to turn around. And then we're coming up on the highway, and it was still snowing like anything. This is where things go south. I'm sorry to drag this out, but where my house is on the highway, there's no exit nearby. So I can either get off early and then drive back roads up toward my house, or I can get off late and drive back roads down to my house. Now, it obviously makes more sense to get off early, except that little back road thing is what I refer to as Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Pennsylvania. It is the weirdest back road. You go by farms and churches and in and out of dales and through. It is not quite a dirt road, but it is damn close many times. And it's for people who live in the area. It's Route 663, I think it's called. And it is harrowing on a summer day. I picked up my wife one time at night at the airport and drove home, and we went this way. I just wanted her to experience it. It is the blackest blacks and the nightest night that you can imagine when it's dark out. And we had decided we were going to go out to eat near our house, and that place was south of our house. It made sense to get off early, and I was like, I don't know if this makes sense because of this road. And she said, when we got off the highway, she said, we are 18 minutes away from the restaurant. And if we went the other way, it was like 40 minutes. And I was like, okay, dude, I am not exaggerating we could have died out there. Like, I'll show you the image from Google Maps because they track where you went. And what you won't understand, because we took a couple of pictures early on, but then when it became life-threatening, we stopped taking pictures. There were trees that fell on little roads that, you know, again, up and around and trees everywhere that were like redwood sized. I have never seen trees this big here. We have pictures of that. There were cars off the road everywhere, all kinds of cars. People, lines and lines of cars in the middle of nowhere, and it's getting dark. And it's whiteout snow, which I've never actually driven in, where it's snowing sideways so hard, the car is right in front of me and I can't see it anymore, even though those lights are on. And we drove over a tree at one point. We drove off the road at one point and somehow got out of this ditch. And my wife and I were like bare knuckling it the whole way. And what it looks like is this circuit route where you kind of go in every little direction you can go and then just come back because there is no passing it. And at some point it was like, we're not going to get out of here. Like there literally is not a route to get out, you know? And we drove around a van that was trapped on the side of the road. We actually stopped a couple times, just to be clear. I did ask people if they needed help. Everyone was in a great mood. I don't know. The three people we talked to were like, "No, we're fine," and they were all like, happy. They're probably dead now. And we, we eventually had to backtrack, and
Yeah.
the road that was unpassable at one point became passable, and just went back to the highway where we got on the highway. So remember, we were 18 minutes away. From that point to the restaurant, 2.5 hours.
Whoa.
Yeah. And it was pitch black by the time we drove out of this thing. And I was like, they're just going to find frozen bodies in a car. It's going to be like a Stephen King movie or, it was the craziest. Like I said, I grew up in this kind of weather. Like I'm not afraid of the snow. I'm not afraid. I can drive in the snow. We have a 4-wheel drive vehicle. And there were moments I was like, we are going to perish. Like, it was really bad.
Yeah, we got the rain with it, not the snow. And I would imagine you got what we got, but much worse, because our winds were like 50 to 70 miles an hour that day. It was nuts. And I can only imagine if that turns to snow, which is what you were getting. And in
the middle of this, so we had a big pine tree in our yard fell over, and my daughter was home, and she texted Stephanie at one point, and she said, "I can hear cracking outside." And then she wrote, "Oh shit, the tree fell down." And Stephanie asked if it was on the house. It was fine, just landed in the yard. Mm-hmm. Thank God. It could have fallen in any direction otherwise, and it would have been bad. But Stephanie never told Kelly what we were going through because she was like, "I can't let this girl worry about this now." And I'm like, "You might want to text our neighbors and tell them to like adopt our daughter or something." Like, I don't think we're getting back. Like, it was really it was kind of unbelievable. Like I'll show you some of the photos. I'll show you the map too. The map is fascinating. Well, except that you won't understand the crazy farmland, woody, whatever. Because early on it was like we took a couple of pictures and posted them. Like, "Oh, we're never going to get out of here. That's really funny." Oh, we're never going to get out of here. This is not funny anymore. Like, let's stop posting pictures and like just focus on surviving this. And here comes my cat.
Well, while you were doing that, I was at the driving range.
Yes, slightly different experience.
It was bright and sunny. It was a little chilly. It was 45, but slightly better conditions than what you were driving through.
Yeah, I don't know. In some ways, I wish I had some pictures of some of the craziness. People trying to push cars out of ditches. There were cars like literally just 45-degree angle down off the side of the road. I don't even know how they ended up in that direction. It was crazy.
So. You got anything else for today, Paul? Anything else to get off your chest?
No. I'm just, work stuff. I'm really excited to be back working again. I'm so.
At least the cat's back.
Yeah, the cat's back. I think it's the sound. She must hear me talking, and she assumes I mean I want her to come in here. That must be what it is.
That's what the cats do. Well, that wraps it up for today, folks. Today's show is brought to you by Cloudberry Lab. Check them out at cloudberrylab.com/FRD to learn how to back up your data just a little bit better to any cloud you want, including OneDrive, which will limit you to 1 terabyte if you're a consumer. But that does it for today. We'll be right back here tomorrow, and thanks for tuning in.